So, hi, and thank you for joining this masterclass. See how I start all professionally now, just straight after we've had a chat. Welcome to this masterclass. So we're going to be going through references, references now. Um, uh, One of the key advantages of using references is it basically gets rid of all of that paperwork. You know, if those of you deal with references before, it's a logistical nightmare trying to stay on top of it. You send off the reference form, they send it back probably a month later or something if you do get it back. And then you got to deal with all the yada, 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 where you're going to file that, how you're going to record that information. It's now on a piece of paper and it's not stored digitally against the volunteer anywhere. So it's not easy. So what the TeamKinetic systems allows you to do is basically digitize the whole process. So it allows you to create a reference form in there, literally putting in all your questions, and then you can either assign that reference form to a volunteer, or you can say, if you want to get this opportunity, then you need to have a reference form, and there's like a process for that. Kind of make sure that's done before the person's allowed on certain opportunities. But in short, it digitizes all of it, which means you can go to any volunteer at any point, and you can see if they've got a reference held against them. Reference forms are stored against the volunteer. I'm aware that probably doesn't mean anything at this stage here. But the reason why I make that point is some people think that the reference forms are held against the opportunity, because you can create an opportunity and say this requires a reference form. But the reality is the reference form is always held against the volunteer. The fact that you're creating an opportunity that requires a reference is just making the system check whether the volunteer's got a reference. And if they haven't, then it's going to force the volunteer to get a reference processed and attached to that volunteer before it lets the volunteer get on the opportunity. But the reference has really nothing to do with the opportunity. The reference is always connected to the volunteer. And the reason why that's key is because it can be used by multiple opportunities across the system. So say, for example, I could create an opportunity which requires a reference, and then that volunteer tries to get onto it. They end up having to get a reference form processed. It's then attached to that volunteer. But then the next time the volunteer tries to get on a different opportunity that requires a reference form, it will just let them onto it because it knows they already have one, because the reference is attached to the volunteer, okay, and not specifically to that one opportunity. Okay, so so the main purposes behind using the references, I'm going to show you a slide now. Okay, so these are kind of different ways you can kind of process. You can kind of process a reference form. So initially, this is the one that most people use it for, where you say, okay, we've got create an opportunity which requires a reference form. The volunteer goes to get that opportunity. It asks for the referee's details, their name and email address. It then emails the referee, who's down here, the reference form. The referee completes it. You know, how do you know this person? They are, do you think they're trustworthy? Yes. How do you know this person? Oh, they're, a family, or friends, or whatever they are. So they fill out the details and then they submit it. Once the reference form is completed, it gets submitted back to the administrator. Okay, because the administrator is the only person who can approve or deny a reference. Okay. And then the administrator approves it, and then the volunteer is automatically put on that opportunity. Let's go through that again, because this is probably the most complex one. So an admin creates an opportunity which requires a reference form. The volunteer joins the opportunity and it asks them, it says, great, you can get in this opportunity, but you need a reference. Put in the referee's name and email address, which they type in. He then sends that reference form off to the referee. The referee answers the questions and submits it. It goes back to the administrator for approval. If the admin approves it, then it holds that reference, that approved reference against that volunteer then, and it'll automatically put them on that opportunity, because obviously, they obviously need to be put on there. That's why they joined the opportunity over here in the first place. So I think did I hear a hand go up? I heard a ping. No? Oh, I thought I heard a hand go up. Okay, so that's the most common way. Other ways that that you may want to use it, you might say, okay, then as an admin, you can manually request a reference form. You can go in and say, okay, then I'm going to go to a particular volunteer. I need a reference form. I'm going to put in the referee's name and email address. That's exactly the same process. Gets sent to the referee. Referee completes it. Gets sent back to the admin for approval. Once the admin's approved it, then it holds that completed reference against the volunteer. Now, obviously, in all of this process here, there's no mention of an opportunity with this one. Okay, it's all about you just want to process a reference for a volunteer, but it's not in relation to any particular opportunity, unlike the first one that we looked at. Okay, but the rest of it works in exactly the same way. And the final way that people use the references is usually if they're migrating volunteers across, and they say, well, all these volunteers, I've got loads of references here that we've already captured against these volunteers. I need to store them in TeamKinetic, store them digitally against the volunteers. So in that case, as an admin, you can literally just add a reference to the volunteer's profile, manually enter in the answers that you've got on a piece of paper. Oh, how did they know this person? I was a family member. Are they trustworthy? They said yes. They can put the answers in, and then it will automatically approve it and hold it against that volunteer. But all three methods are essentially just ways of getting the reference to be completed and getting it approved by the administrator. Okay. Is there any questions over any of that? No? Good. All right. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is create a reference. I should actually ask you, is anybody, do you have one of the things I want to mention is kind of who it's going to work for and who it's going to be harder to work for. So if you have an organization, thinking them things that I've just said there, them reasons I said about who approves it, it's always the admin that approves a reference. If you have an organization where you have your providers all work for your organization, I'm thinking kind of out of our customers, like your YHAs, one of our customers who, they're an organization. The admins obviously work for the YHA, and all the people, the providers of the opportunities also work for the YHA. Then it tends to work best for them kind of organizations, because it doesn't, when the reference is approved against a volunteer, it can be used for any opportunity, but that doesn't matter in that setup because every opportunity is offered by YHA. So YHA are happy that the only person who can approve the reference is the administrator. It works well for them. It can work for organizations where your providers are external, work for based on other external organizations. It can work for them, but it tends to work best in that scenario if you're only using the references as like an onboarding process. So what I mean is, you might say, well, every volunteer who registers on our system, we want them all to have a reference before they can join any opportunity whatsoever. Well, that's fine, because again, in that scenario, the person who you want to approve the reference is the administrator. And that's the key thing. The only person who can approve is the administrator. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and first of all, we're going to do this initial process here, okay, which is where admin creates the opportunity and requires a reference. So first of all, we need to create a reference form. So to create a reference form, you need to be logged in as a super admin. How do you know if you're logged in as super admin? Grace, how do you know if you're logged in as super admin? You reckon? Some general knowledge testing here.
I'm not sure, actually. I think I always do.
You don't know. If you're super admin, you probably don't realize. There was a difference between an admin and a super admin. There's one key difference. Elizabeth, any ideas?
No, maybe at the top it says admin. I think I'm just an admin rather than a super admin. I don't know.
No. You're very close. You're at the top, which is very close to what I go for. Annabelle, that's a chance.
No, I've not come across that.
Oh, okay, no worries. If you're a super admin, you can see that cog in the top right, which gives you access to the super admin menu. If
I'm
you're not
super admin.
Yes, if you're not a super admin, most of you are, I think, on here. If you're not a super admin, you won't see that cog. Everything else is the same, but you don't see that cog. But the reason why that's important is in order to create the reference form, okay, and put in all the questions, how do you know this person, blah blah blah, then you need to be a super admin, because it's how within the super admin menu. Reference forms here. So when I go to reference forms here, I can see which reference forms. So I should say I've got my admin hat on here, so I'm playing the super admin hat on here. Reference forms, I can see which reference forms have been created. I can add a new reference form. So I'm going to do reference form 2, I'll call it. Put in a description. This is a training reference form, but you might put in, this is an advanced reference form. This reference form should be used for those who have to work with vulnerable and children, or whatever it is. You may describe what in your organization, what its purpose is, when you tend to use it and when you wouldn't. Okay. I've got this thing called levels, which all I'm going to tell you at this stage, there's a document that you'll receive after this training session, and it's going to go through everything that I'm talking about here with screenshots and this, that, and the other. And it's going to talk about the levels. But all you really need to understand about the levels is you have levels 1 to 6 with references, and all it is different kind of different. How can I say it without using the words different levels of references? Like you might have a basic reference form which asks 3 or 4 questions. But then you might have, when someone's dealing with volunteering with the young or the vulnerable, then you might say, well, they should have an advanced reference form, and where you asked 15 questions. So you can give reference forms different levels. And the reason why that's useful is you might create an opportunity where you say, well, this opportunity requires a reference form which is a level 6, which means that they must have completed a reference form. The basic one won't be good enough. They must have completed a more advanced reference form before they can get onto the opportunity. So that's what levels is about, just putting them in some kind of order, basically. Okay, so reference form 2, lowest, level 1, click on add the reference form, then add the questions. So give me a kind of question you might get on a reference form. Annabelle.
How long have you known the applicant?
Yep. The volunteer. Volunteer. I should say the email that the referee gets does state the volunteer's name, and if it's related to an opportunity they're trying to get on, it also says the name of the opportunity in that email. So the referee is receiving it doesn't just get, complete this reference form. They have no idea. They realize who it's for and what that person's trying to do, because that sometimes could be relevant. Okay. So when you put in the question, how long have you known the volunteer, we can decide how the referee can answer that question. Well, that would be a number, I'm guessing. You'd have to put years in here, wouldn't you? Okay. Number, is the answer required? Yes, and I can add that question. Okay. Another question. Elizabeth, common question you might hear on a reference form.
Are they trustworthy, or?
You're just using my ones, aren't you? Easy best. I'm going to ask one more. You better start thinking quick.
I know.
Are they trustworthy? It's going to be a yes or no answer. Yeah, obviously. Yes or no. Answer required, yes. And Grace, last but not least.
Yeah, what capacity do you know the volunteer in? Sorry, it's one of yours again.
Do you know them? Okay. And that would be a free text field. And I might say, well, I could explain that in probably 3 lines, I reckon. Answer required, yes. Okay. So I've added a reference now, a reference form with 3 questions in it. And I can see the 3 questions if I click on questions here. Okay. They're all in red boxes, which, as we know with the TK system, means that they're mandatory fields. They must be answered. Okay. Brilliant. So going back to our process. So the admin has created a reference form. So the first thing the admin needs to do is create an opportunity which requires a reference form. So as the admin, I'm going to go into create opportunity here. I choose put in the opportunity name. Make put some name there. The description here. And there's a page on here when you're creating the opportunity which says, does this opportunity require a reference? You need to be in the create a fully managed opportunity, obviously, because that's the one with all the options in. Okay, ask for references before joining. If I say yes to this, and it says, okay, then how many references do you want? Because you might say, I want 2 references before they can get on this opportunity, if you wanted to. You can also specify the level. This is what I mentioned a minute ago. You can say, all right, well, all the rest, my references are level 1, so I don't get much of a choice there. I could specify level 6 if this opportunity was dealing with the young or the vulnerable, for example. Preferred reference form, I'm going to say it's reference form 2, the one I've just created. And that's it. Do you want to allow everyone to access this opportunity? Yes, I do. And we'll access it. Okay, next. You've probably seen these screens 100 times, like I have. And what kind of opportunity is a flexible opportunity? Create the opportunity. Brilliant. Okay. So we've got an opportunity now, which has been created. And if I go down into the restrictions, I can see ask for references, yes. Okay, reference form 2. So we've got an opportunity now, which is requiring a reference form. Creates opportunity, requires a reference form, tick. Next thing, the volunteer now needs to try and join that opportunity. So I'm going to take off my super admin hat and put on my volunteer hat and search for an opportunity. Reference to opportunity name. That's the one we just created. I click on it. Looks normal, perfect. Yep, happy. Click on the join button. Hang on a second. This opportunity has prerequisites. You'll need to add your references before joining. That's where they put in the referee's name. Linda Lusardi. That's the name of someone, I don't know who it is. Things are back from my childhood. Linda. Who's Linda Lusardi? I don't know Linda Lusardi.
I feel it might be someone famous.
I
I'll
do.
just Google it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But I don't know who. It's a famous, I think it's from a while back, isn't it? It came from my childhood, it feels like. Linda Lusardi, 1, 2, 3. Let's put in an email address. So what about, oh, damn it. Linda Lusardi, 1, 2, 3. So I put in a name here of the referee, put in their email address. Okay, so this is I'm the volunteer member. Oh yeah, I know so and so. Linda, yeah, she's a good friend. Yeah, I've known her for years. There's her email address. Click on save. Thanks, you're done. Okay. Now the next thing is, if I go to Mailinator now, sorry, I go to the inbox of the referee. So I'm now taking off the volunteer's hat and putting on Linda Lusardi's hat, whatever she looks like. Okay. They get an email. Please complete this volunteer reference. Dylan is offering to join a volunteer opportunity with training application for the opportunity reference 2. So it says there's a name of the volunteer, okay, and it says the opportunity that they're trying to get on. Okay, we'd greatly appreciate it if you complete this reference. And again, with all the automated emails in the system, you can change the wording of it in the super admin menu. Click on the link, takes them through to the page, which asks them those questions. How long have you known the volunteer? 8 years. Are they trustworthy? Yes. What capacity do you know them? Friend. Okay. Save. So the referee has entered the details. They've clicked on save. It tells them thank you. Okay, and it gives them the chance to register as a volunteer as well. Always trying to push new people to register on your system if we can. Okay, so now that reference has been completed, an email is sent to the administrator. Let's look at the process map again. The admin has created the opportunity, which requires a reference. The volunteers join the opportunity. It's emailed the referee. The referee has completed the online reference form. And now it's emailed the administrator waiting for that final approval. So if I put on my admin hat and go to volunteer management, down to references, awaiting approval. Dylan Marks, reference form 2. There it is. I can click on the manage button here. and I can see it, see the answers, and I can make a decision of whether to approve it. Yes, that all looks good. Apart from that field hasn't picked up the number 2. I'm going to approve it. Okay, and that's it. That reference form has been approved. Okay, so that's the first way. Any questions over that process that we've just done? Nope. Okay. The second process is, well, what happens if you just want to, it's nothing not related to an opportunity, you just want to get a reference added to a volunteer. Well, there's a couple of ways you can do this. They're both basically the same way, but there's 2 different pages. So one page you can add a reference onto a volunteer is you just go to the volunteer's profile page. Okay, volunteer's profile page, you go to references, and I click on add a reference up here in the top right. Then it asks for the referee's name and email address, and then if I wanted to, I could attach it to an opportunity, and then it's going to send that off to the referee. That's one way I could do it. I could do exactly the same by going down to references here and clicking on create reference. But here it doesn't know what volunteer I want to add the reference to. So the first thing it asks me is, okay, who's this for? Okay, Dylan Marks. Okay, but then it asks me the same questions again. Who's the referee? Oh, it's Linda, whoever it is. I put in the details, and it will send off the reference form to that to that referee. The referee will complete it. The referee will complete it. They'll when it's submitted back, then it's submitted back to the administrator. The administrator will approve it. Once it's been approved, then the volunteer then has that reference form attached to them. And you know that the volunteer has a reference form attached to them because as an admin, I can go to any volunteer and just click on references and see what references are attached to them. I go to Dylan Marks here. I go down to references. I can see that's that reference form that we did before attached to the volunteer, which means that next time I try and get an opportunity which requires this reference form, it's going to let them get onto the opportunity straight away. It won't even ask them for it. Okay. Any questions over what I've covered there?
Can you put like a time? Oh, go for it. Go for it, Grace.
No, you go. I'll go after.
Can you put a time limit on how long a reference lasts, please?
You can't. No, I'm just trying to think of a workaround.
No, it sounds okay. I'm just thinking about. It's normally fine once you've accepted it, isn't it?
I don't know.
You could always ask for another one later on, I suppose. You could do that. There's never a limit on how many you can have against the person. Yeah.
There's no limit, and you can always see it when it was submitted and the rest of it. You can see it against the volunteer.
Yeah.
Just trying to find a way of trying to identify which ones have. I mean, you could put in a custom field with a date field in there, saying reference expiry date or something like that. That's one way you could identify people where it's expired, and you'd have to keep an update on that every time you got a new reference.
And can you do a report on references, like who's got them and who hasn't?
I'm pretty sure. Very good question.
Yeah.
If you go into the volunteer management.
Yeah.
It's not in there, then I can get them to add it, but I'm pretty sure. I reckon it will be.
Just thinking because I've taken over an established, they've already established everything on TeamKinetic. So I didn't even know we had any set up already, but I've seen that we have. So I'm just thinking to see who has and hasn't, and what I suppose no one's told me about a reference process we've done before. So wondering if I can just do a bit of digging to see if they've ever used it kind of before.
Yeah, no, I see that. Yeah, if you go into the search volunteers page, which I'm sure you're aware of, when you go to the filters, there's a filter called type.
Yeah.
And it actually incorporates a few kind of filters within it. And one of those filters is do they have photos, are they opted in and out of bulk emails, but also has a reference or no references.
Oh yeah, that's good.
So I can click on has a reference and search, and it's going to show me every volunteer who has at least one reference.
Great, thank
Dylan
you.
Marks there.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you, I suppose, if there's no questions, I'm going to stop the recording there and go on to any kind of specific questions to you and your systems. Any other questions related to references before I stop the recording?
Could I just ask, can you like change the email blurb per reference form, or is it just a generic one? Because obviously in some of them it says for the opportunity of blah blah blah, but then if you don't have an opportunity linked to it, would you have to have a separate
Oh no,
blurb?
it just says the name of the person. So name of the
Okay.
person, yeah. But yeah, all within the customize emails in here. So if you go under customize emails, okay, and best way I tend to find is Control and F and just type in references, volunteer reference approved, volunteer reference request, volunteer reference request with no opportunity. So it's these two here.
Cool.
So you were saying about the second one, you were saying what if there's no
Yeah.
opportunity?
Yeah,
And
I didn't know if it would just have a meltdown and
it says
say
the volunteers. No, the volunteer's name. So say Joe Blogs is offering to join a volunteering opportunity with your organization, blah 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 blah. So yeah, it just doesn't mention the opportunity. That's all, obviously.
Perfect.
Okie doke. Any other questions related to references? Recording. Okay. Well, for those of you who are watching the video of this, then thank you for your time, and yeah, get involved and try it out.